Jessica Sanders is an author and a social worker, and she's passionate about creating resources that nurture and look after kids, particularly positive mental health and gender equality. Sounds like something very highfalutin, but it's not. It's something that kicks in with every one of our children and with us as well. Her first book was Love Your Body, and that's been sold in 25 countries. And her newie, Be Your Own Man, is just about to come out. Jess, it's so lovely to meet you. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me, and lovely to meet you as well. And I'm pretty good. Like, COVID times, lots of ups and downs, but yeah, mostly ups at the moment. I feel lucky. I'm in nature, staying with my parents at the moment, so it's nice to have that available to me. So yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think you're right. Getting that green and blue and all that happening, it's so important. Jess, how did you go from being a social worker to an author?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting story. I'd say I'm still definitely a social worker, and I work for a social justice campaign at the moment 4 days a week. So the two kind of inform one another. And they're my two loves. I think I like the doing, but also being a part of making the change, which is what I see my books as being part of preventative education. And so actually just happened around my kitchen table, just in a discussion with my best friend and housemate, and we were just ranting and raving about the pressures placed on young girls. I think we just read an article with some alarming statistics around the pressures placed on young girls, and the lengths, like plastic surgery and things that they were going to, like under 18. And I was studying gender studies at the time at Melbourne, and I was like, I was just getting angrier and angrier, as you do when you're going to go down that rabbit hole of gender as a female. And I was like, I just need to do something about this. I need to put some energy, channel this frustration into something productive. So yeah, she just sort of said, why don't you write a book? And I'd never thought of it before, to be honest. My mum actually writes books, and like that's a big part of her life. And I think when you're a young girl, you're like, I'm going to be different to my mum. I do different things. But I just saw it as a way to deliver a message. It was something that was available to me, I guess, through role modeling through her. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a crack. And she sort of helped me and mentored me along the process. And I released that book as a Kickstarter in 2018, which was funded fully about a month later. But through that process, actually was introduced to my now publishers, 5 Mile, who really resonated with the message. And the book was pretty much finished at that point, but they loved it and wanted to take it as it was, which was really exciting. And I've been working with a designer based in Melbourne and an illustrator in Brazil. And so that's kind of how that relationship came about. And that's when then they were like, they signed me on for a 2-book deal. So Be Your Own Man, it was a question mark. We didn't know what it was going to be, but it was always in the works down the track. Yeah.
So with Love Your Body, what have you discovered about what's happening now with body image for young girls? Because we like to think it's getting better. Is it?
Not from the research, and I don't personally think so, like anecdotally either. And your listeners can probably guess why that is. It's to do with Instagram and Facebook, and just the ways that perfected bodies are now represented online. It's really inescapable. So it used to be kind of something that you would engage with maybe through a magazine or on a billboard or on television, but there'd be a lot of times in the day when you weren't engaging with it. But now with them in our phones and this endless stream of that imagery just keeps coming in. And the increased pressure also comes from the fact that people that are showing you these pictures, perfected pictures of themselves, maybe took them with the same device that you had. So before it used to be like, oh, they could be photoshopped, they're models, they're up on billboards or whatever, and it's very unattainable. But through the iPhone or the smartphone, it means that all of us can potentially be that model. And so now there's no barrier between. And then the pressure's increased when you see your friends posting perfected images and things like that. So yeah, I think it's definitely increasing, unfortunately. But on the flip side of that, there is some good things to come out of social media. For example, I actually was quite inspired by a lot of the people I found online. So I sought out a lot of people in the body positive movement. And if any of your listeners don't know about this movement, it was basically started by they were self-identifying like fat and Black women in the States who were pushing back against the stigma that they experienced due to their bodies and their ethnicity. And it just was basically showing and talking about parts of the bodies and just being unashamed and putting it out there, because like you know, we've got this platform that we can control, and so we can put out there, whereas before the gatekeepers were the magazines and things like that. So I followed a lot of these different people that were really leaning into this movement, and they were showing parts of their bodies that I'd never seen before. And it actually, after time, it normalized what was normal in my own brain. Like I noticed a real shift of, at first I saw it and I was like, oh my God, I don't think I like that. I've never seen that. I've been told not to like that, you know, fat rolls or whatever. And
So
after time I was like, oh.
We're talking like my friend and I call the flubberbutters, when you wave and
Yeah.
the fluffy bits under your arms. And
we're talking all of it. We've got this, we've got the, you know, the tummy rolls, cellulite, stretch marks, body hair, everything. And it was women just really leaning into their power and embracing that. And after time, I found that to be so beautiful and appealing, and then started to experience it more in myself. And I was really inspired by them. And so I remember after about 6 months of just only following these kind of women online, and you know, it was a positive experience for me going on social media. After that time, I saw my own body differently. I remember catching myself in the mirror once and seeing like a little fat roll, and being like, oh, that's cute. And just sort of kept moving, whereas before that stuff would just keep me up at night. So it was a really interesting shift. And I was like, oh, we can unlearn these toxic messages. And that was like revolutionary to me. But then I was like looking at all these girls going, you're going to have to go through this painful experience that I did. And my experience was very, I'd say, normal, the average experience, which was just having a negative body image and not liking how you looked and wanting to be thinner. But it was painful. It took up brain space, took up time. It robbed me from a good relationship with my body. And like the research tells us that when girls don't like how they look, 8 in 10 are less likely to go to social events or engage with their peers. 7 in 10 are less likely to be assertive in their opinion or stick to a decision. So this was actually impacting them, you know, on a systems kind of level, just in their life trajectory. And I thought, how unfair that you have to go through it, and then maybe you'll have space like me and time and resources to unlearn it. And it just seems like a waste. And when I did the research into it, I found that like a lot of these issues started at about 8 years old. And there was no resources for 8-year-olds. Yeah.
And that's a terrifying thing from my point of view as a teacher. And also once I was 8, many years ago, that it is starting so young and younger. I think when I was young in the 70s, it was probably about puberty, you know, 12, 13, you became aware of your body and I'm fat or I'm whatever, the things that we used to say. But now it's so much younger.
It is. And like I'm having people come to me with 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds saying they're calling themselves fat, they're not eating and all this kind of stuff, which is really distressing. But and look, every child is different, and some might not develop that awareness and critique until a little bit later, like you said, maybe teenage years. But I think the point being is that they will develop it. Like I don't know a female that hasn't had a negative body image. And so what this book is really doing is sort of priming them and giving them the language to relate to their body in a positive way. And a lot of parents themselves don't have that language to relate to their own body, let alone to pass on to their kids. So it was sort of introducing that conversation in and looking at the body as something that can do amazing things, as a functional thing, and that we should be grateful for, as opposed to critiquing it for what it looked like and an appearance-based thing. So that's where I think its power lies, that even if a child isn't having negative body image issues, it's a very friendly way of introducing it that's really accessible. And also we introduce normal by displaying all the things that I spoke about. You know, there's stretch marks and cellulite and things like that kids can see and be like, oh yeah, cool, that's normal. And when I get that too, I'm not going to freak out because I've seen it before and I'm not strange or unnormal or whatever.
Yeah, those things that are kind of, I don't know, life markers that you get, you know, that they are normal and not to hate them. And the thing I think that really got me with what you said too is that it's held people back in all ways, like in assertiveness, in speaking up. It's not just, do I look good in this? That's the bit that I went, oh, wow, I hadn't actually thought of that.
Yeah, it's... You know, I think I like to take a very holistic approach to my social work, and that's sort of the way I see the world, and I make these connections. And this is a really big thing. It's like, it's not superficial. It's been framed as this superficial issue that girls will inevitably have. I remember someone saying to me, pre-thinking of the book idea, oh, this is just how it is for girls. You know, this is just the reality. And it's sort of dismissed, but in actuality, how we see our bodies, and particularly for girls, it's how they see their worth, because they're told more than boys are that their body is their worth. So if you're told your worth is not good enough, like, you know, your value in this world you're not meeting it, you're not doing the best at it, you're not super valuable because you're not achieving this beauty ideal, which is unrealistic, then you are going to retreat more, and you're not going to maybe connect, or you're not going to have that confidence that girls already are lacking. That they're not going to have that to just go out and do things and try things. Like the confidence, that I had to be like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to try, like, and created something. Think about all the things that girls could have created but didn't, because that confidence wasn't there. And unfortunately, they'd put the confidence into how they looked as opposed to what they can do. So it's an important thing to focus on.
Yep. Before we get on to the boys, because the boys are the next topic, when it comes to the book itself, how's the response been? Because, it's always great to hear back from readers or whoever. How's the response been to the book?
Oh, incredible. It's just been the best thing of my life, actually, just getting the messages, particularly when it first came out for the first 6 months or so, all the time, just in my DMs on Instagram, sharing little things that kids had said, or sharing that, like, a lot of adults actually reading it and having a cry or feeling really hurt or feeling that they could change their own behavior to their bodies because of these simple truths, and because I think it comes back to the inner child for them as well, that they needed to hear that, and that they're so glad that that message is out there for future generations. So it's been really rewarding part of creating it, and the fact that I could never have dreamed that it would be in different languages and in different countries. I think we've got like about 7 different languages now. So that kind of knowing that those words are there that I couldn't have ever reached is a really gratifying thing. And it's just been all wildly positive.
And
I was a bit scared though, because sorry,
no, don't be scared.
I was a bit scared putting it out there, but just because there was people in bigger bodies, which we live in a really fat phobic society, so I thought I might get a bit of trolling for that, but everyone really gets it. So that was nice.
Now, your mum's an author, and so she will have said to you, that sort of reaction, 7 languages, 25 countries for your first book, that's pretty damn amazing. Do you realise how amazing that is?
Yeah, she did say that. She's told me that. And a few people in publishing have told me that too. I guess coming in, I didn't know. It's actually 29 now. It's just nuts, and it keeps growing, which is so nice. But I think what it is a testament to the need for something like this, and the fact it was missing. I don't necessarily think it's due to my amazing writing or anything. I just think it's just due to the fact that, like, we were missing a huge resource, and that this is quite a universal issue that speaks to a huge amount of people in the population. It affects a lot of people, and we're at a time, the timing is important as well. We're at a time where people are realizing and acknowledging that importance and the unattainability of something like this, and are wanting and willing to talk about it, whereas maybe 10 years ago that wouldn't have been the case. And I think it's thanks to a lot of groundwork by those body positive influences and stuff that I mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Jess, the first book is Love Your Body, and that's for girls. The boys' book is called Be Your Own Man. Why the switch in, I guess, focus? Because boys too have body issues. So why did you make it Be Your Own Man, not Love Your Body Boy?
Love Your Body Boy. So as I mentioned before, like, Love Your Body was really coming from this place of girls are being held back by this issue. Their worth and their value in our world is being placed on their bodies. And so we have to address it, but we also have to tell them that they're so much more than their bodies, and that they're allowed to take up space, because they're always told to be smaller. And I think that's reflective of how we speak and sort of how we present ourselves, as well as our physicalities. Like, bodies represent how society wants us to be in the world. And I'm a bigger girl in the sense that I'm 6 foot. And so I always felt like I should be shrinking and smaller, and I'm quite loud in my opinions. I've been given that space at home, but I noticed going into the world that that's not how girls generally are perceived or liked to be. So when I wrote this book for boys, and there was a real cry out for help from parents for it, in particular when I went on Love Your Body on the book tour, every conversation I had, parents were really worried about boys and their body image, and they were identifying that as an issue. But I knew, I guess, from my social work and gender studies, that the issue of body image, again, like Love Your Body, it goes beyond that. It goes to the gender driver. And the driver for boys is be bigger, take up more space. So the opposite of girls. Use your body to intimidate, to embody strength and toughness, to not show any sign of weakness, which is how we want boys to be emotionally and behaviorally as well. So I really wanted to pull apart this definition of what it means to be male basically in Australia, but also in the Western world. And I wanted to give boys permission to be themselves, to be vulnerable, to ask for help, because I could say to them, like, all the messages in Love Your Body, but like the barriers are them asking for help, them not wanting to look weak in their bodies and emotionally. So I had to speak to those things. I just don't think that they can be addressed individually. The two fed each other. So the boys, they do have their diverse bodies, and there is that representation, and there's a beautiful spread of them all at a pool party, and they're all different abilities and colors and sizes, and it's really lovely to see. And those messages of self-love and self-care really embedded throughout. But there's also emotional resilience skills, so teaching them how to process certain emotions, how to respond to them, and sort of rebranding things like asking for help or kindness and vulnerability as strengths and valuable traits, not as weaknesses that they're sort of portrayed in our society. So yeah, I was kind of speaking to all the issues that they were facing and trying to create a holistic book just for them that did all those things. And so it very much is a book in its own right, but if you look to them together, I've actually got them here, I'll just hold them up.
Oh yes, please.
If you look to them together, they look they're a pair, but they're also different books in their own right, which is very nice. So
they're beautiful. So did you use the same illustrator with the new one, with Be Your Own Man?
No, we used a new illustrator. I really wanted to have a male illustrate this one that could bring their own experience of growing up as male. And Robbie, who's our illustrator, he's a male identifying, but he's also a gay male. And so that experience of, being into art and being slightly, I don't know if he'd say this, but more like feminine than maybe other males that he was, connecting with at the time, that feeling of difference. I think he felt how important it was to have boys in there that were being creative and that were reading and sort of just showing all these ways to be. I don't know if it will come across properly, but the page I'm kind of talking about shows the two kind of ways. So it's sort of like you've got the illustrations here of boys sort of in those rigid ideas of clothing or sports or whatever, and then you've got the boys being creative and dancing and painting, and just simple bits of representation like that I think are really important, because we don't see many images of boys doing those softer things, and we can't be what we can't see.
No, years ago, whenever James Hird was playing, before all the other debacle, when he was playing for Essendon, that used to be my favourite things to say, the boys in the class. Well, James Hird did ballet for 10 years or something. So, I did grin when I saw the ballet one. Jess, with those books, because you had such a definite what you're trying to get across, often with books, as a writer, you write them, you give them to the illustrator and you step away. How much input did you get with the illustrating to make sure that it was right on message?
I had a lot of input in the sense that I wrote all the briefs and went back and forth and commented on every draft and iteration, just because, and because when I did that with Love Your Body, so that was kind of how I set up my process and also I actually did my undergrad in photography. I'm quite a visual person. So it was really important to me that I could convey that, and that the visual element was a really big part when I was writing. So I was kind of imagining what it would look like at the same time. So Robbie and I worked pretty closely. I actually had it written into my contract that I was able to participate in all the aesthetic parts of the production, which isn't, as I understand it, the usual way, as you said, like you send off the book and you don't have any. But I'm a bit of a control freak, and I have a clear vision, and once I have it, I'm very headstrong in where it's going. So I just, and I love that 5 Mile were willing to collaborate with me on that and go back and forth. So that's been a really nice experience.
I think too, because it is non-fiction and because it is so based in your study and experiences, I think, you have to have that real control freak about it so that it is right on target. It's beautiful.
Yes, because I think they're just as important as each other.
So here's the $55,000 question. What's next?
What is next? I'm actually in that stage at the moment where I'm giving myself a bit of space to think about it, because I had a bit of a whirlwind. After I Love Your Body, I actually wrote like a book for teens and adults, this one, Me Time. And so writing one after another and then writing Be Your Own Man, I burnt out a little bit. Like I got pretty tired. And I also, as I said, work as a social worker 4 days. So during this COVID time, I'm taking time to reflect and really think about purposefully what the next thing will be. I have a few book ideas that I'm really passionate about, but they change too. So I'm just giving it time to percolate
I'm
in my
happy to
mind.
share with you, my editor used to call it composting. She'd go, "What are you working
Yeah.
on?" I'm going, "Oh, I'm just thinking about it." She said, "You're composting." And I went, "Yes, I really like that."
Yeah, it is. It's sometimes they just sit in there for a while and you have to just let it, I guess merge into one and then come out as a different thing, as a different product, like composting at the end of it. So yeah, but I think I do a bit of like talking at schools and stuff and presenting, and that's been something that's really fulfilling as well. So I'm going to be doing a bit of that for sure.
Oh, and so needed. These topics are so needed. Well, Jess, on the kitchen table to a published author, and goodness knows how many more to come. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me as well. It's
Oh,
been a joy.
it's been a delight to talk to you, and good luck with the new one, Be Your Own Man, because I know Love Your Body is absolutely kicking goals everywhere. So here's to Be Your Own Man as well. Thanks, Jess, very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.